What a treat. Thank you, Cahill and Deline. Oh boy, we're back in our same building again, our same room. Yeah, good to see everyone this morning. And happy Earth Day weekend. Were you able to get outside and have a rendezvous with nature?
Yes.
Yeah. Do it again. Today, that's my plan. So we can feel our connection with the earth and bask in the wonder of the natural world. Because we are nature, right? Human nature.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? So we're human nature, divine nature, learning and growing and loving and knowing ourselves even more, our wholeness and oneness with God, our oneness with each other, and with all life on this planet. And so we can hold this in prayer for humanity's awakening as well, that collectively we grow in our stewardship for care of our planet and grow collectively in our respect for all people and the sacredness of life. Yeah. So may divine wisdom and love guide consistently our choices, large and small, collectively and individually. So who feels like you're pretty good at listening and discerning divine guidance? I see a little, oh, maybe. Yeah. And that's the first part, and the other part is taking action on that. Because sometimes we get that, we're pretty good at hearing it, but then the next step, taking action, right?
Remember it when you wake up.
Yes, listening. So maybe sometimes, some days or some periods in our life, it's really easy, right, to connect. The guidance is so clear. We take action. It just flows. We're in the flow. But, other days or other times in our lives, maybe it's a little harder to connect or to trust the voice, or our mind gets really activated. And, we're looking for a sign. Have you ever prayed, for a sign? And so you're looking everywhere for a sign. Oh. But not that sign. So we keep looking. Oh, yes. You did ask for a sign. And we keep looking. Where am I going? Where? What is the right way to go? Oh, no? Okay. Then I had another slide up there that said God. It was a road sign that said God this way. So, signs. I was reading an article in Psychology Today that said that on average, each person makes 35,000 choices per day. Wow. Per day. Which comes out to, maybe you math wizards have figured this out already, 2,000 decisions per hour. Or one decision every 2 seconds. Choices, so many choices. And as the complexity of life, heightens or gets more complex, so do the myriad of choices that we're faced with, right? And it's no wonder that sometimes we can feel that decision overload. But fortunately, we have spiritual tools to deal with this, to discern, that can help us return to the simplicity of sanctuary in prayer and meditation, to develop our skill for listening, develop our capacity for discerning and following divine guidance. to tune out the outer voices and to tune in to God. And isn't that why we come here on Sundays? To tune into that higher source and have that strength and that connection and that flow and that communication to have greater peace and love and prosperity in our world, to be that light we want to see in the world. So tuning in and aligning, because there are a lot of other voices that are, and some very loud, shouting about what we should do, we should say, even how we should think, you know? So I think we all struggle at times with, tuning that out or discerning. And sometimes, and I've been there too, we can go unconscious, right? Go unconscious and just follow instructions that lead us farther away from our goal, from our spiritual center, and from our values. But fortunately, there's a way back. Always a way back to center. So we're going to look at a teaching story today from the Sufi tradition that we haven't heard in a while, but it's a good one. And this is about Nasruddin and his son, who were taking a trip with their little gray donkey. And the son was riding while the father was walking alongside. And some strangers encountered them on the road, and one man scolded the son. He said, "Look at you, young, healthy man, letting your father walk. Why, the old man looks like he's about to have a heat stroke." That's today's youth for you. Indolent, disrespectful. Well, after they passed out of sight, the son was so ashamed, he dismounted off the donkey and insisted that his father ride while he walked. And along they went, and everything was fine for a while. And farther along, a group of women were sitting by the side of the road, and they clucked their tongues. How's that? Clucked their tongues, complaining loudly. "Look at that! The lazy father rides and lets his poor boy walk on this hot day. How cruel!" So embarrassed by the woman's comments, Nasruddin pulls his boy up to ride with him on the donkey, and they traveled that way for a while. And before long, they approached some villagers, and one piped up, "What a shame. I feel sorry for that poor little donkey." Carrying both of those grown men in this blazing heat, that beast looks like it's almost ready to collapse. So after this group passed, Nasruddin stopped the donkey, dismounted, helped his son down. In one hand, he held the donkey's reins. In the other hand, he held his son's hand. And exasperated, he said, "Now, nobody can complain." And they resumed their journey. At the next village, they walked by a shop where a group of men were standing around. And while the men saw the trio trudging on 8 legs, they laughed and pointed, taunting them. "Look at those fools walking in this heat with a perfectly good donkey. They could ride it. Don't they have any brains at all?" And so the story goes. So guidance. How can we discern the good and God-given advice from the changing tide of human opinion? And how can we calm that inner critic as well, so we can allow that higher wisdom to come through? Because those loud flip-flopping thoughts, they're in our minds sometimes, right? To do this, no, do that, no, go this way, no, go that way. Or we talk ourselves into something when our gut is saying, no, no, no. Am I the only one who's done that? And we learn, right? We learn by that, so no experience is wasted. We learn and we grow. But this can happen when our fear gets activated, right? Or we're feeling exhausted or pressured or rushed, like we have to make something happen now. I remember several years ago when my kids were in elementary school and I was in the dating world, and we were part of this single parents group. And this one man and I started talking, and we started going out, and he was very well-mannered, polite, soft-spoken, but there was something off. Just a little something off. Like where he worked or where his kids were. It was just very vague, you know? And so when you want something so bad, you're willing to put things on the shelf like, oh, that doesn't matter. I'll just, we'll get to know each other. And, but still that feeling like something wasn't right here, even though logically it seemed just good, looks good on paper. And I remember coming back from a date one night and sitting on the couch next to him, and we were quiet for a minute, and this thought just popped in my mind. He could be violent. I had never, ever, ever had that thought before with anyone, friend or date, no one. And my mind wanted to argue with it, like, oh, what is that, But it was quiet and persistent. And then a little like precognition or seeing if I went this route. And it got my attention, and I trusted it, and kind of backed off, and that was the end. I listened to that guidance, because sometimes guidance, your body knows, your energy field knows. And it takes the mind a while to catch up. And then talking to women in the group later on, he mysteriously disappeared after a while, and talking to women later in the group, my intuition was spot on. So learning to trust that. Sometimes we push things anyway, and usually when we do that, wow, we don't like the results, or it's just so difficult, So divine guidance has its own timing and its own rhythm and its own way of speaking to us as well. So it calls us to have patience, to surrender, to trust, to have faith and trust in a higher guidance leading us. Kind of reminds me, do you remember those Choose Your Own Adventure books? My kids used to have those. And so you read the story up to a point, and then it says, turn to page 74, and then you get an outcome that way. Or turn to page 92, and you get a different outcome. Well, when we trust God, it's like turning to page 104, and it's blank. Where's the rest of the story? What's going to happen? I want to know. But when we trust God, it's like that invisible ink is written on the pages of our heart, that when it's time, will appear and be revealed to us to take the next step. We all have something right now that's written in invisible ink on the pages of our heart that will be revealed in its due time with the right light and attention to it. Light of our consciousness. I like this from C.S. Lewis. There are those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, all right, have it your way. Okay, I'm missing a slide. I had one that said, have it your way. It was a street sign. I'm like, that's really a street? It is in, I think, Vallejo or Vacaville, one of the V cities up in, have it your way. Technology is so fun, It's like another decision to make here. So when we pray to be divinely guided, we're strengthening our partnership with God. And you may remember the story about a woman who was praying for guidance, and she was writing the word out, and her vision kept landing on the word dance at the end of the word, dance. And I really love her realization that she shared about this. Doing God's will is a lot like dancing. When two people try to lead, nothing feels right. The movements don't flow with the music, and everything feels uncomfortable and jerky. But when one lets the other lead, both begin to flow with the music and sync to each other's nudges and subtle cues and move beautifully as one. So in partnership with the divine, we must be willing to let God lead. You know? Let God lead. Instead of the ego that says, no, God, I'm going to sit this one out right now and just dance by myself over here. Willing to let God lead, trusted that we will be moved in the right direction. Richard Rieger, a Unity minister, has this advice. I love this. He says, about discernment. There is no heaviness or darkness associated with ideas received from the still small voice of your inner partner. Follow that peace in the midst of the ego static, and it will bring you safely to your destination. So right now, where in your life are you willing to let yourself be led by God, by your partner in this dance of life? Jesus advised all of us when we're worried, doubtful, impatient, or questioning to seek first the kingdom. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all will be added unto you. So righteousness means right thinking, aligning our minds with the one presence and power, attuning to God, mind, and heart, attentive to the nudges and rhythms of when it's time to pause and when it's time to move. Another teaching story we have today is from the Gospel of John, and it's about the paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda, who's been showing up and wanting a healing there for 38 years. 38 years. So we read, when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, Jesus asked him, "Do you want to get well?" And the man replied, "Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." So there's a rumor that at this pool, a certain hour, an angel would appear and stir the waters, and whoever was first in there would be healed. So he's talking to Jesus about his frustration, And Jesus says, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." And at once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. So notice, he didn't pick up his mat and go get in the pool. The way he thought his healing was supposed to happen. He listened to that higher guidance and was directed into the right path. And it's interesting that this man, he just got up and went into town, went about his life. And when the Jewish leaders saw him, they scolded him for carrying his mat on the Sabbath, because they didn't think it was the right timing for this to happen. And the man replied, "But the man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" He listened. He moved when it was time to move, even though society around him said, you can't do that. But he listened and moved his feet. trusted the voice of the Christ and took action. So it takes a lot of trust and willingness to listen, because sometimes when we follow higher guidance, we're kind of swimming upstream, against the tide of opinion from those we know and those we don't know. And also in this story, it shows us that sometimes we can feel paralyzed, symbolically paralyzed by our past or our wounds or the way things were supposed to go and they didn't go that way. But when we're willing to be healed, willing to let that go, willing to rise, we can hear that still small voice and take action and move into a new life, the new life that is calling us. So we're going to conclude today with a practice that will help us drop away the worries and relax to not only seek the kingdom, but to find it. And this process is called the Golden Key from New Thought leader Emmett Fox. How many of you have heard of the Golden Key before? Oh, quite a few people, okay. So for those of you who are new to the Golden Key, I'll just explain it a little bit and then we'll close with it. Well, Emmett Fox was a New Thought leader who was primarily active during the Great Depression. So he came up with this practice when some really dire things were happening in the world. And he calls this Golden Key process, quote, a practical recipe for getting out of trouble. He describes it as a prayer that will enable you sooner or later to get yourself or anyone else out of any difficulty on the face of the earth. It is the golden key to harmony and happiness. And here's how it works. It says, stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. Whether it's a big thing or a little thing on your mind, whether it's for guidance about a decision, a health concern, finance or a legal issue, a family rift or quarrel, anything, whatever it is, stop thinking about that and think about God instead. That's all you have to do. Sounds simple, right? So to think about it and to speak everything that you know about God. God is wisdom, God is love, God is here, and so on. And repeat this several times a day. It's a prescription to get back to center. He says to become so absorbed in the spiritual world that for a few moments every day, you really forget for a while about the nagging issue, and your demonstration has been made. In other words, your prayer has been answered. So this is a way to clear our minds, to lean into that dance with God, to enjoy that partnership with God. And so if you choose, you can join me in this golden key. And you can practice this at home with your own words, but there's some different ways to do this. I'm going to read it, and you can either close your eyes and let the words wash over you, or you can read it along, or we can do it shaker style. The shakers will just read one sentence that pops out to them, or one word, when you feel moved. And it's kind of a delightful, fun way to do it. So whatever way speaks to you, you can do that. So here we go with the golden key. Whatever has been on your mind or has popped into your mind you want to just to release. We're just going to set it aside now as we turn to our awareness to God. Ready? There is no power but God. God is wisdom, truth, and love. God is present everywhere, has infinite power, knows all, lives in and moves through all of creation. I am the child of God, filled with and surrounded by the perfect peace of God. God is infinite love, and I am a creation of God's love made visible. God is the one true source of all, the source of my prosperity, my health, and well-being. God is creator, creation, and the creative impulse in me. God is universal power, strength, imagination, and I am one with this universal power. God is substance, life and intelligence, and that one light, one love, one presence is guiding me now. And so it is, and so I let it be. Thank you, God.